Art Harris continues with a journey inside the mind of a terrorist.
A busy street corner in Tel Aviv. The aftermath of terror. A Palestinian suicide bomber leaves his mark.
The man wasted no time. He took himself out of that truck, and within 3 or 4 minutes, he had blown himself up.
Along with the bomber, 13 dead. Among them, Larry Belkin's wife, Gail, and his mother-in-law.
This is actually at our wedding, which was less than a year ago, as I said.
They'd just picked out a wedding dress for Gail's daughter. Belkin had to pick out his wife's body at the morgue that day in March.
Yes, there she was, or something, similar. As somebody was, blown up in a bomb. It doesn't look quite the same. It's simply beyond my comprehension to understand people who would do things like that.
What happened on this street here in Tel Aviv has not only spread fear here in Israel, it's shaken up the people guarding the games in Atlanta. The challenge for law enforcement everywhere is to understand the twisted mind of a terrorist, someone who believes so strongly in his cause, he's not only willing to die, but take innocent people with him. For those trying to protect the Olympics, the first step is to understand the mind of a terrorist. Someone like this, a suicide bomber who changed his mind. Meet Musa Ziyada, a 16-year-old Palestinian from Gaza.
I wanted to die, to become a martyr, away from the tragic life I had lived on the Palestinian streets among my family and friends.
Last year, Musa says he was ready to kill as many Israelis as possible, all in the name of Hamas, the radical Islamic group behind recent suicide bombings. What Musa now calls religious brainwashing began here, when he was 8 years old. Hamas recruited Musa at this mosque in a Gaza refugee camp. Here, children play and pray in the shadow of graffiti that honors Hamas bombers. In camps like these on Israel's doorstep, poverty festers with dust and despair, then often turns to hatred against Israeli soldiers who still guard the gates of Gaza. For Musa, the pressure to follow in the footsteps of other bombers began with Hamas's religious training.
They used to preach to us, take us to the graveyards, play audio tapes of the Quran, tell us about the suffering within the tombs, anything that would encourage us to go for such an act.
His Hamas teachers glorified those willing to die for the cause. Their funerals would be paid for, their families taken care of.
They convinced me a Jew is your enemy. I was convinced I was doing the right thing. For them, there was no difference between a civilian and even a pregnant woman. All were Jews.
In the refugee camps, Hamas appeals to the hearts and minds of youngsters like Musa, beaten down by life in Gaza.
Hamas offers hope and moral victory over humiliation and desperation.
Dr. Ayed Siraj is a Gaza psychiatrist who treats the young and the angry. He says many who once saw their fathers humiliated by Israeli soldiers are ripe to be recruited for suicide missions.
They don't believe they're going to die. They believe they're going to live a new kind of life, which is a better life.
Unlike the treacherous road of life in Gaza, Hamas promises aspiring martyrs like Musa a path to heaven paved with glory.
Rivers of milk, honey and joy, rivers of happiness and wine, young women. The martyr gets to choose 72 women only for himself.
His place in heaven was guaranteed, Musa showed us, if he did this: strap on his bomb, hold 2 wires together, and blast off to paradise.
Boom, just like that, and you're a hero.
I am hero in heaven.
Before he could blow himself up, Musa got caught. His father found his suicide note and turned him in. Musa was arrested and brought here, the jail in Gaza. That's where we met another accused suicide bomber named Rashid. He was caught with explosives just 5 days before his mission. People who don't live in Gaza can't possibly understand why a young man like yourself would be willing to commit suicide because life is unpleasant.
People will understand me. The economic situation is really bad. That's what really got me in the operation.
Rashid says his mission was to blow himself up on a Tel Aviv bus. The same day President Clinton and other world leaders were in Egypt. The lives of Rashid and Musa may seem a world away from the Olympic Village here in Atlanta. But suicide bombers and terrorists from the Middle East are high on the list of concerns for those guarding the games.
A number of conflicts taking place in the Middle East. Hamas has issued threats against the United States.
Security expert Brian Jenkins monitors terrorism around the world. He warns if Middle East terrorists can hit the World Trade Center, they could strike anywhere. Even Atlanta.
They have demonstrated in bombings in Europe, in Asia, in South America, in New York City, that they have global reach.
Here's some of what worries Jenkins and those in charge of Olympic security. Revenge for this summer's trial of Ramzi Youssef, accused of plotting to blow up U.S. airliners. The possible deportation to Israel of this Hamas leader. And action by followers angry at the life sentence given to Sheikh Abdul Rahman for plotting murder. Then there's the threat from the radical group Hezbollah to take its suicide bombing campaign worldwide. Jenkins says the overall risk level has never been higher.
Probably the threat is at an all-time high in terms of some type of terrorist attack being directed against the United States.
As for Musa, he is no longer a threat. After his arrest, he renounced Hamas's idea of killing in the name of Islam. For that, he's been praised by the likes of Yasser Arafat. Yet he lives with death threats from Hamas.
Please help me.
You're afraid?
Yeah, because I'm afraid.
Do you still think killing is justified?
No. I really believe now that the most disgusting thought for me would be the notion of killing.
Musa no longer lives inside the mind of a terrorist. Today, all he wants is to study hard. He's first in his class. Only now, his dreams are different. He wants to become a doctor, not a suicide bomber.